Hey everyone, it's Natasha of natashaskitchen.com, and today we're making my favorite cake. It's actually my mom's recipe for her Spartak cake or Spartak cake. And we're gonna do a twist on it. We're gonna make it chocolate. This is one of the most requested videos on my blog, and so here you go, enjoy. We're gonna start with the ingredients. So you'll need 2 cups minus a tablespoon of flour, a tablespoon and a half of cocoa, 1 cup of sugar, 1 large egg, 4 tablespoons of softened butter, 1/3 cup of sugar, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And for the frosting, you'll need 1 package or 8 ounces of cream cheese, and get that to room temperature, so take it out now because you'll need it later. Also 2 packages of unsalted butter, also at room temperature, and 1 can of uncooked sweetened condensed milk, 3/4 cup of heavy whipping cream, and about 1.5 tablespoons of powdered sugar. Now, if you don't want to make your own whipped cream, you can use 8 ounces of Cool Whip if you want to. I like the heavy whipping cream version, but that's up to you. So let's get started on this great cake. The first thing we want to do is sift together your flour and your cocoa. The baby wanted chocolate, that's what happened. And so, can't refuse the baby, nope. I'm 18 weeks now and these chocolate cravings are getting crazy. Okay, I think that's all that's coming out of that little cup. It must have been wet. I don't know, whatever. Okay, so got that sifted, let's put that aside. Now, the next thing we want to do is in the bowl of a stand mixer, and you can do this with a hand mixer, it's just a little more tedious. We're going to put in 1 cup of sugar and 1 egg. Okay, and you're going to beat that for 6 minutes on medium speed just to get the sugar nice and dissolved. Scrape down the bowl as needed. I just do that once in the middle of mixing. We're ready to add our butter, our baking soda, and our warm milk. Now we're going to crank that up to medium-high speed and go for another 3 minutes. Next, you're gonna set up your water bath, and you don't need any special equipment for this. I just have a large pot of water, well, it's about 1/4 filled with boiling water. I've got a glass bowl over the top. You can also put a smaller pot over the top. You just want it sitting above the water so it's over the steam and not actually submerged in the water. So we're gonna take our mixture from our stand mixer and just pour it into that hot bowl. And we're gonna mix it for about 10 minutes, just stirring frequently. Okay, our mixture has been on the stove for about 10 minutes, and we're gonna remove it. Just be careful because there's hot steam underneath. Turn off the stove. And without waiting, we're gonna mix in our sifted flour and cocoa. You don't wanna wait or you will ruin the dough. Okay, so just stir that in. Now you can see what this looks like when the flour is all incorporated, and it's still very sticky. Now keep in mind it hardens as it cools, so what you're gonna do is just set this aside and let it sit at room temperature for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, you can see that the dough is no longer really sticking to the spatula. It's still warm to the touch. So while it's warm is when it's the easiest time to roll out this dough. So we've got our oven preheating to 350 degrees, and we're gonna start by taking a heaping tablespoon at a time of this dough. Just transfer that dough onto a sheet of parchment paper. And you're gonna sprinkle the top generously with some flour, and that'll just keep it from sticking to your rolling pin. And just start rolling it out. You're gonna make it into about a 9-inch round. So just start working on it, and if it starts to stick to your pin, just sprinkle a little more flour. Okay, I've got it about 9-inch round. And to make sure they're even circles, what I take is the bottom of a springform pan. You can also use a plate, and just lay it over the top. And then take a pizza cutter and just slice all the way around. And what's easy about this is we bake directly on the parchment paper. So what you're gonna do is pull the scraps away, because if you don't, they'll bake into the cake, and you don't want that. We want to use the scraps later to make crumbs out of them. So just make sure they stay on the parchment paper, but they're pulled away from the cake. Now I'm usually able to get 2 layers on one large sheet of parchment paper. So we're gonna bake this for about 3 to 5 minutes at 350 degrees. You can use a cookie sheet or the bottom of a cookie sheet to help you get this into the oven. But otherwise, you just transfer it right onto the rack. Okay, our first 2 layers are done, and they look just perfect. I kept them in there closer to 5 minutes. And we're just gonna let those cool, set them aside, and actually reuse that parchment paper. Now to make the process a little bit faster, while your first layers are in the oven, you can start rolling out your next ones. Also keep these dried scraps, because they'll turn into cookies basically that you can crush and then create this nice topping for the cake later. So you're gonna continue with the rest of your layers until you're done. Our cake layers are done, our crumbs are hardening nicely. We wanna let that cool to room temperature while we start on the frosting. So start out with 2 sticks of softened butter. Put that in your mixer. And then add 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. And it can just be a raw condensed milk, it does not have to be cooked. Easy peasy. Okay, and once that's in, we're gonna beat that on medium speed for about 7 minutes. Okay, you can see it's turned into a frosting consistency. So now with the mixer still on, we're gonna add the cream cheese just 1 piece at a time. And once it's all in, we're gonna continue mixing for another 3 to 5 minutes or until the cream cheese is completely mixed in. If you see cream cheese stuck on the walls, just scrape it down as needed. And keep mixing until your frosting is nice and smooth. The last step of our frosting is whipped cream. Now again, you can use Cool Whip, but this is just so easy and it's natural and tasty that I love to do it this way. So we're gonna put 3/4 of a cup of heavy whipping cream in a cold bowl. I put this in the freezer for 10 minutes before I make this. And that ensures the best and fluffiest results for whipped cream. Then our powdered sugar, add that right in and beat on high speed for a little under 2 minutes or just until it's thick and spreadable. But don't overdo because it'll turn buttery. Okay, nice and thick. Now fold your whipped cream into your frosting and just stir it together until it's well incorporated. Ah, looks wonderful. Okay, now for the exciting part. We're gonna put this cake together. All right, so we've got our layers here. And I like to assemble it right on that parchment paper that I was using earlier to bake. Less waste, less cleanup. I like it. Okay, so we're gonna start with our first layer on the bottom. Okay, and then we're gonna add enough frosting on top to completely cover the surface. Don't be shy with the frosting, you'll have plenty for all 7 layers. Oh, this thing's gonna be so good and beautiful when you guys finish this. Your family's gonna love it. This is a favorite for kids too. Kids love this cake, my son's favorite cake. Okay, see how much frosting I added on there? So now just take that next layer, put it right over the top, center it evenly, and push down on it. This makes sure that you don't get any air gaps under the cake. And continue with more frosting all the way till you're done. All right, and I like to save the most lovely and even layer for the top. So push that down, that's our last layer. And now we're gonna cover the cake on the top and sides with lots of frosting. Just use the rest of that frosting up. All right, our cake is frosted, it's smoothed out and beautiful. Remember those scraps of dough that I had baking on the sheet with the cake layers, you know those? Well, what I did is I pulsed them in my food processor to create a fine crumb, and that's what I'm gonna decorate the top with. Now, if you don't wanna use the scraps, you can also use crushed graham crackers, you can use chocolate shavings, and I've got a little bit of those just to add a little more chocolate kick to the top. Okay, so what we're gonna do is just start sprinkling the top and the sides with these crumbs. It's gonna give it that classic Spartak look. This is exactly how my mom does it. Now the sides of the cake, that gets a little bit tricky. There's a few different ways that you can do this. You can either just like toss it onto the cake, which doesn't give you a super awesome coverage, but once you've got some crumbs on there and some that have collected on the bottom of the cake, you can just kind of flick it up. And you see how that coats it a little bit better? All right, our cake is decorated, and now comes the hard part. You have to wait about 10 hours to let this cake rest and really soak up some of that great frosting into the cake layers. It's gonna be soft, it's gonna be so good. It's worth the wait, guys. So what I did is I transferred the whole cake with the parchment paper right onto a cutting board. I'm gonna cover it lightly or loosely with a piece of plastic wrap. And I'm gonna put it in the fridge for 10 hours. It's gonna sit in there overnight. You can also put this in a cold garage if it's cold out. Oh, I can't wait. So we'll get back to this once it's soft and delicious, and you guys will see the inside. All right, I've been waiting so patiently for this thing to soften up overnight, and it's perfect now. So what I do to transfer it from the parchment paper to my cake platter is I take a spatula and I just run it around the bottom of the cake to loosen it up from that parchment paper. And then it just lifts up pretty easily. So transfer it right onto there in the center. Okay, and then you can decorate the top with some fresh berries if you like, just to make it a little extra fancy, give it a little sparkle. Now you get to slice it up and enjoy. Oh, yum, I can't wait. Okay, gonna give it a little extra sparkle. Whoops, on top of the cake, on top of the cake. Okay, here we go. Just like Mom's. For a print-friendly version of this recipe, visit natashaskitchen.com. I've also included a link below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.